The new League of Legends finals are just around the corner and the hype is real. Today we're talking to Evan, who is the top laner for BRISTOL WHIPPED, and we're discussing what it takes to reach the finals.
Hi, yeah, I'm Evan, or BRW Evan in game. Very inventive, I know. I'm the top laner for BRISTOL WHIPPED. Yeah.
So your team made it to the new finals. Can you talk about how was the whole process, what it takes to get here, what was your favorite part, what was the hardest part of getting to the new finals?
It's great. We've actually been before. We were the finalists last year. Sadly, we couldn't go all the way to actually win the whole thing. But so we've done the journey before, but that doesn't make it any less enjoyable to me. So as for the enjoyment part, I just love playing fives, high level competitive League of Legends. Whether you call it high level or not is up to you, right? But I just enjoy that. And personally, I think the hardest games, so the games against people like Brunel, against like Bath, against Warwick, against Roehampton, the top tier teams, I think those are the most fun. Because especially the early stages, new and stuff, you just get some one-sided games, and that's not the best for either team. So that's my favorite. As for the hardest part, I'd have to say staying consistent, because league changes quite a lot, right? So last season we were playing like a very different style of comp to how we're playing now. So staying top tier throughout the season changes and throughout maybe just changes in your life, because you need to be strong mentally as well. I think that's the hardest part. But as long as you have good communication and good atmosphere in your team, that's not impossible. Yeah.
So you managed to make Neil finals 2 years in a row. Can you make it 3 out of 3? A nice little hat trick? Or are you a third year and you can't compete anymore?
I'm a third year right now, but I'm doing a master's, so it's not my last year. So yeah.
So fingers crossed that you can keep the same roster, yeah?
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully there's no major roster changes and we can just get here next year with the same team. It'd be great.
How important would you say is keeping the same roster, year on year, not changing any big parts of the team, so the cohesion and the tactics is there?
It definitely helps. We actually had 2 roster changes this year, so we brought in a whole new bot lane from our last year's bot lane. The dynamic definitely changed. I think the key synergies to have are synergy between the bot lane, synergy between jungle mid, and to some degree synergy between jungle and top. And the 3 people stayed on with top, jungle, and mid, and all 3 of us are good friends outside of league as well. So we already have synergy, and keeping that over for next year, it makes it a lot easier, and especially at the start of the season when other teams might have a completely new jungler who's new to fives or whatever. But having the jungler and maybe middle top stay over is really helpful in my opinion.
So what is your stream structure? Do you have a coach, an analyst? Like, what do you think other teams are lacking to reach sort of your level or just to improve university level in general?
We don't have an official coach, so to speak, but our last year's AD carry, Phil, he's basically our coach. We call him Coach Phil. Has a little notebook and everything. Writes down some pick spans for us. Yeah, it needs a book. But yeah, so he's not necessarily a coach. Like, he won't VOD review all our games, but he'll draw up some nice spreadsheets for us, the champions might want to practice, champions to pick, do some VOD reviews and point out some key errors. But mainly, I think as a team, after each scrim, we'll do a small VOD review. We'll look at the main things that went wrong. So although Phil really does help, I think you don't need a coach. We don't have a coach, and we're certainly top tier. So yeah, mainly just 5 players, with Phil popping in and out, giving us a few handy tips every now and then.
What do you think other universities can do to get better at League of Legends?
So obviously you need to have good players, right? That's a given. But you don't need to have amazing players everywhere, right? Because I think there are some teams with like really high elo players, but if you don't have good teamwork, you're not going to do well in Newell or NSC, because fives is a very different game for solo queue. So for solo queue right now, it's good for basic macro, but I only use it to practice like mechanics and matchups. Whereas competitive League of Legends is very different, because the way you get vision, player and objectives, all that is completely different. I think a big issue is what you draft, because in solo queue you don't draft comps, right? You pick a champion you want to play and you play it. But in fives, the game can just be won or lost depending on the champions you pick. Especially when I first started my first year of Newell, I was a 2 or 3 trick, and then I was master tier at the time, so I was the highest rank on my team. So I just get all those 3 banned away, and then I was I lost, like, what do I pick? So I actually ended up playing a lot of Warwick top, Warwick in the top lane in season 7. So I think the main thing to kind of get to a higher tier is to think about what you're going to draft. You're going to draft Engage, you're going to draft Poke, you're going to draft this. Just make sure, even if you don't get the best lane matchups, it's quite important to draft a comp that actually works together. Because if you have like 5 winning lanes, but they don't actually do anything together, then you might have a hard time closing it out.
Okay, in your personal opinion, where do you think university esports should go in the future? Should it follow the same structure like traditional sports of, having paid coaches, dedicated practice times, or should it be sort of more informal and sort of the way it is now?
I think the level would certainly increase if you had, dedicated practice times, coaches, and all that. But it's how realistic is it to implement? Because if we were to hire a coach, where would we? What money would we hire it with, right? Because I think it's quite hard to get revenue when it comes to esports unless you get to the top level. Like live events are quite rare. New or live, and the finals being the only one really. And I love them. Don't get me wrong; they're amazing. I love more. So if we were somehow able to do more of those, get some more funding, um, yeah, I think it would be great if it could be the more traditional way. Not because of it, not because it's traditional, just because it would certainly increase the level. Um, but I think one of the appeals of League of Legends is that it doesn't have to be so formal. So if you're not that interested, you haven't got to get on a coach for 6 hours and go over, to whatever uni you're playing. You can just go up to your room on a Sunday or a Wednesday now, sorry, play those games. So I think I'd be perfectly fine with it going higher because I'm really passionate about high level league. But for those, I think it's good to stay informal because that means everyone can play. You don't have to commit too much of your time to do it. So yeah, that's my opinion.
So what are you specifically and your team doing to prepare for the finals? Are you scrimming all the time?
We don't scrim every day. Even now, I think because scrims are quite taxing mentally, right? If you just keep trying, really focusing, it taxes you. I think so. We don't really do any specific preparations until playoffs, and then when you get to playoffs, we look at the team we're facing, we look at their picks, and we practice what we think would be good into them. So we just played against Cabbage Family in the semifinals, and they are a team that loves to draft late game scaling. It's their main play style. So we just thought, can we roll them over early or can we match their scaling? So we practiced doing those two compositions and then got good enough both of them and we had a clean 2-0. So I think, especially for the final, we've played Brunel quite a lot as well. So I think we know them decently well. So yeah, all our preparation, all our scrims, we're just testing what we think would be good against them and then trying to think of the best comp we can.
Yeah, I guess big appeal for competing at a really high level at Newell, sort of, top level, top 5, top 10 teams is you get to play against the same team. So you get to know the teams, you get to know how they play, how they strategize, if they pick early game, late game, and things like that. So it does feel a lot more like, a proper league, like LEC. You know the teams, you get to play against them. And there is a little bit of, frenemy relationship with them. Like you know them, you like them, you sort of easily could play solo queue with them, but at the same time, like you want to beat them really badly, don't you?
That's it's one of the major appeals to me as well. Because like my favorite games to play would be like Brunel, Cabbage, Bath, Warwick, especially because when you get to this level, like I won't like I'm not friends with the enemy teams maybe, right? But we do have a bit of friendly banter. There's a few diss tracks have been flying around over the past few years, right? So it's really nice to have that because I don't want to be toxic, but it's nice to have a little bit of banter so the games actually mean something more, right? A little bit of ego on the line as well.
So, do you have any words for the other finalist team?
I'm just excited, honestly. I don't want to say anything toxic. Like we've had games against them before, and I think at the start of the season we were much better than them. Like I think we played 5 games and we won 5 or something like that. But then the recent games have been much closer. We haven't played them much this split, but obviously they did win the Newell finals last split. I mean, we were hungover, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse, right? But I think I'm just excited because best of fives are a very different kettle of fish as well, right? So I just want to say to them, good luck. Don't choke. Let's make it a good best of 5 series.
Thanks so much for joining us. It's really nice to have you here. And at the end, do you have any words for anyone who's watching these videos?
To anyone watching the video, I'd like to say, thanks for tuning in. Because I'm really glad, given the circumstances that are happening right now, it's really great that Newell can still actually go ahead, right? So to anyone contributing to that view account, contributing to that hype, making it so that these finals are actually almost as good as they could be live. Just cheers for tuning in. Maybe thanks for throwing a copy pasta in Twitch chat, supporting BRISTOL WHIPPED. That'd be lovely. So just thanks, guys. It means a lot.